Hi, this video is for section 7.6, factoring polynomials in our Algebra 1 class. We will spend the rest of chapter 7 working on factoring. So today is an important lesson to get you started on the right foot. And the truth is, chapter 7, once we're done, we'll be done with the class. So this will take us through the rest of our school year in Algebra 1. We've been working super hard so far in chapter 7, multiplying polynomials using the area model. So you've done a lot of work with these area models on your page. And what they do is they've taken you from two binomials or a binomial and a trinomial, but essentially two different polynomials, and it combines you down into one. So you end up with one polynomial answer. What we're going to do now in the second half of chapter 7, factoring polynomials, is the opposite. It takes you from the one polynomial and breaks it in to two or more. So it's like multiplying. You're taking separate ones and putting them together into one. Factoring, it's almost like you're dividing out. You're splitting this up into two. So we're going to work backwards a little bit. So when you see a question that says something like this, like completely factor, you might get a problem like this. It looks like we've got a polynomial here. There's two terms. Notice you have one term here, a second term here. You always know they're divided by that addition or subtraction sign. So when we're factoring, we're trying to figure out what we can divide out of both terms. What can you take out of both terms? So when you set up your answer, you're going to give yourself a space where you will write what you can divide out from both. And then if you think of that original polynomial as almost being in parentheses, what you need to do is recreate those parentheses and make space for what's left over, what you couldn't divide out from both. So I made two different spots here to help us save space for the two different terms. So I'm going to use some color coding to help us out a little bit. Let's look at this first term of 8a to the fourth. I'm going to rewrite that as 8 times a times a times a times a. And then I'm going to rewrite this negative 24a squared. I'm going to have a negative. And then the 24 I'm going to redo as 8 times 3. And then a squared is a times a. Now what I'm looking for is what can I divide out of both terms. So I need to have it, in order to divide it out from both terms, I need to have it in both terms. So I notice both terms have an 8. So I was able to divide out 1/8 from both terms. What else? I notice the first and the second term, or the blue and the red, both have an A. So these two match up and I pull out 1A. And then I notice that there's another set. I've got another blue and another red that can be matched up, so I can take out a second A. Now, many students will say, well, what about these two right here? Can I combine those and pull out a third A? And remember, you need one from the first term and another from the second term. So I would need one from blue and one from red to be able to cancel them out. Like here, first term, second term, blue and red. First term, second term, blue and red. First term, second term, blue and red. So now let's fill in what we have left. From our first term, the only thing that's left is an A and an A. And from our second term, what do we have left is a negative and a 3. So I'm going to write a negative 3 in that second slot. Now to clean this up a little bit, 8 times A is 8A squared. Then in the parentheses, you end up with an A squared minus 3 as your final answer. That's considered completely factored. 3 more examples to go. Here's another one. I really like the look of this one. It looks really similar. It has two terms. I remember that those terms are divided by that negative sign right there. So when I kind of set up what my answer is going to look like, I need a space to put the common factors. I need a space to put the thing I could divide out of both. And then in parentheses, I make space for the leftovers. Since I had two terms in my expression, I need space. I need to hold space for both terms of the leftovers in that parenthesis. So let's go ahead. This 12x to the 3, I think I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as 4 times 3 times x times x times x. And the negative 8a squared, I'm going to have a negative. And then how about the 8? Let's do 4 times 2, then times x. And you might wonder, well, Miss Milton, why did you pick 4 times 3 and 4 times 2? I did that because remember, you're looking for what they both have in common. And I thought, oh, if I use 4 times 3 and 4 times 2, they both have a 4. So there's my pair of 4s. I get to divide out a 4. You can kind of easily see if you look up here, 12 divided by 4, 8 divided by 4, that works. What else do both terms have in common? I've got a blue and a red x, so that pulls out an x. And I have another pair of blue and red x's. The blue is from one term, the red is from the other. I'm looking here, I have a 3 on the top. I don't have a 3 on the bottom to match it with. I've got an x on the top. I don't have another x to match it with. So now it looks like I have to put in what I've got left over. So when I look here, I've got a 3 and an x left over. So I'm going to write that. That was from my first term, so it goes in that first saved spot. And then my second term, there's a negative and a 2 left over. So I'm going to put in my second spot a negative 2. So to clean this up just a little bit, 4 times x is 4x squared, and the leftover is 3x minus 2. So that would be your final answer. Let's try another one. Moving right along. This one looks super similar to the ones we've just done, except hopefully you're noticing this one has 3 terms instead of 2. You can see they're divided by this plus sign and this minus sign. I'm going to go about things just kind of the same, so I'm not going to let it worry me. I'm going to have the spot where I put my common factors, the thing that all 3 terms have, and then I have my parentheses to fill in what's left over. But now, because I started with 3 terms, I need to save space for the leftovers of 3 different terms. So that's why I'm making 3 slots in my parentheses this time. All right, let's break this down. 4x to the 6. So I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit. What number could 4, 8, and 12, what could I divide all of those by? And I'm thinking of 4. So when I write these out, I'm going to use it. I'm going to have my first term break into 4 times x times x times x. So I have 6 x's listed. And then the plus 8x to the third. Well, I want that 4, so I'm going to do 8 is going to become 4 times 2, and then x to the third, I'm going to write 3 x's. And then for that third term, I've got a negative, and then 12 I want to write as 4 times 3, and then that one just has 1 x there. So let's look and see. Now, I need, in order to pull out common factors, I need something to be in all 3 lists. I need a blue, a red, and a green this time. It's not good enough if they're just in 2 of the lists. You need them in all 3. They need to come out of all 3 terms. So when I look here, I notice all 3 terms, all 3 lists have a 4. So I was able to divide out a 4. It looks like they all 3, I got a blue, a red, and a green x. And then I think I'm stuck because I've got another blue x and another red x, but I don't have another green here. So I can't pull out any more x's. So now it's time to move up to here and fill in what's left over. So I'm going to look at my list of blues. I've got an x, an x. That looks like 5 x's. So that's going to be x to the 5th. Look at my second list. I have a plus, a 2, an x, and an x. So that's going to get rewritten as plus 2x squared. And then to finish for my green, all I had left was a negative and a 3. So I'm going to write a minus 3 in there. And it looks like I kind of cleaned everything up as I went. So this would be considered the factored answer. One more to go. This is a great problem. It's just like the one we did before. You can notice there are 3 terms in here. You will see that they're divided out by those plus signs. So I'm following the pattern and making a spot, saving space for what can I pull out of all 3 terms. And then in parentheses, because there were 3 terms to start, I need to save space for the leftovers of 3 different terms. So that's what my final answer setup is going to look like. So now let's go ahead. I need to break up 9, 18, and 27. And I can notice I can divide out a 9 of all 3 of these things. 9 divided by 9 is 1, 18 divided by 9 is 2, 27 divided by 9 is 3. So when I break down my first term, I'm going to just keep it as it is, 9 times A times B. When I break down my second term, I've got a plus. That 18 I'm going to rewrite as 9 times 2. A squared is A times A, and then there's a B on the end. And my third term, 27A cubed times B, I've got a plus. That 27, I want the 9, so I'm going to do 9 times 3 times A times A times A times B. All right, so what do we have in all 3 lists? I've got a blue, red, and a green 9, so I can pull out 1 9. It looks like, oops. It looks like I've got an, oh, why is it doing that? Sorry. Hold on. It looks like I've got an A, and an A in all 3 lists, so I can factor out an A from all 3 terms. And it looks like I have a B in all 3 lists, so I can factor out a B from all 3 terms. Now, this is interesting. When it's time to fill in the leftovers, well, it's super easy to do the last one in green. I've got a plus, a 3, an A, and an A. So in that last slot, I'm going to do plus 3A squared. In the middle slot, my second term, which was red, I had a plus 2 and an A. So in that middle slot, I'll have plus 2A. But then I find something interesting. If I look at that first term, there was nothing left over. I used all 3 things up. So the question is what do you put in the first slot? Do you put a 0? You can't do that because that makes that whole space disappear. You have to save room for it. So the truth is when all 3 are used up, give it a placeholder of a 1. So that would be the final answer for that problem. Make sure you have all 4 of these written down in your notes. Please go to Schoology. There's a nice homework assignment for you there to practice these along with an answer key. Best of luck to you, and please reach out to your teachers if you need some help. We are here for you. You can do this.